Why does community matter in podcasting? Well, think of it like this. A podcast without a community is like a ship without a rudder, aimlessly floating. A supportive community not only guides your podcast towards growth and longevity, but also brings a sense of direction and purpose. When you foster a community, you're cultivating a space for listeners to engage, share thoughts, and even critique. This engagement is like gold dust. It provides valuable feedback, helping you refine and improve your content. It also creates a buzz around your podcast, encouraging other potential listeners to tune in. Imagine your podcast as a conversation. You're not just talking into the void, you're speaking to an engaged, interactive audience. This two-way interaction makes your podcast a lively, dynamic space, rather than a one-sided monologue. So, in essence, community is the lifeblood of podcasting. Having an engaged community can be the difference between a fleeting podcast and a lasting one. Building a podcast community is a process that requires careful planning and execution. It's much like constructing a house. You start with a sturdy foundation, then add layers brick by brick until you have a structure that is both solid and inviting. The first step in this construction process is to define your target audience. Who are they? What do they like? What do they care about? The answers to these questions will guide the rest of your community building efforts. It's about understanding their interests, their fears, their hopes, and their dreams. Once you've got a clear picture of your audience, you can tailor your content to resonate with them on a deeper level. The next step is creating engaging content that encourages interaction. This is where the magic happens. You want to create content that not only informs, but also invites your listeners to engage. Ask questions, share stories, and encourage your listeners to do the same. The more your audience feels involved, the more invested they will become in your podcast and its community. Now, let's talk about social media, a powerful tool in fostering community. Social media platforms can serve as a virtual meeting place for your listeners. Here, they can discuss your podcast, share their thoughts, and even suggest topics for future episodes. It's a wonderful way to keep the conversation going beyond the podcast itself. Lastly, consider hosting live events and meetups. Nothing builds a sense of community quite like face-to-face interaction. Whether it's a live recording of your podcast, a Q&A session, or just a casual get-together, these events provide a unique opportunity for your listeners to connect with you and each other. Remember, building a community is not an overnight process, but with consistent effort, it is achievable. Like any worthwhile endeavor, it takes time, patience, and persistence. But the payoff, a vibrant, engaged community of listeners who are as enthusiastic about your podcast as you are, is well worth the effort. So get out there, start building, and watch your podcast community grow. Engagement is the lifeblood of any community. But how do you foster it? The key lies in creating interactive content that invites your listeners to participate. This might be through quizzes, polls, or challenges that tie in with your podcast's theme. These tools do not only engage your audience, but they also make them feel like they are part of the conversation. Another strategy is hosting Q&A sessions. This could be a special episode where you answer listeners' questions, or a live session on social media. This platform allows your audience to feel heard and valued. Encouraging listener feedback is also crucial, whether it's through social media, email, or a dedicated section on your website. And remember, it's not enough to just gather feedback. Responding to comments and messages in a timely manner is essential to keep the conversation going. Engagement is not a one-way street. It requires active participation from both the podcast creators and the listeners. In the digital age, forums and social media groups are invaluable tools for building community. They serve as virtual gathering spots where listeners can engage with one another, sharing thoughts, ideas, and experiences related to your podcast. This ongoing dialogue not only enhances the listener's experience, but also fosters a sense of belonging to a larger community. Imagine a dedicated space where listeners can dive deeper into podcast topics, ask questions, and even suggest future content. This two-way communication allows podcast creators to understand their audience better and tailor their content accordingly. It's like having a continuous focus group at your fingertips. Moreover, these platforms can help your podcast gain visibility through word-of-mouth marketing. As listeners share your podcast within their networks, it can lead to an organic growth of your audience. But remember, fostering a community requires active participation from your side as well. Engage with your listeners, acknowledge their contributions, and make them feel valued. Forums and social media groups are not just platforms for discussion, they are communities in their own right. So we've covered a lot of ground today. We've underscored the significance of community in podcasting, discussed building one, strategies for engagement, and the utility of forums and social media groups. Remember, the key to a successful podcast is not just great content, but also a strong, engaged community. So get out there and start building yours today.